death on his orders. The reconciliation between the youngest daughter and King Lear must be one of the most beautiful speeches that has ever been written, and it consists of 15 repetitions of one word. So I want you to bear that story in mind with the Jewish story. You know, Jews always have to be a little bit complicated. Because the youngest daughter in this story, which is called Love is Like Salt. And we as Jews know what salt means to us. In Leviticus, it says, you do not offer food, you do not give food without offering salt. Very frum Jews wash a newborn baby in salt water. We use salt with our challah. We kashrut with salt. What else do we do with salt? We flavor our food with salt. If you've got any other, at parsley, we dip it in salt in a Pesach. Salt has great meaning to Jews. So now, sorry.
Bring salt and bread into our home.
We bring salt and bread into our home. And a new home, they bring salt and what? Yes, into the home. So this
new home.
into a new home.
When you move into a new home, you have salt and bread.
Yes.
And the Jews, they wash the meat with salt. And
They kashrut meat, you use salt for kashrut? Right, so those are the three elements to bear in mind, and I love this story and I hope you'll enjoy it too. Love is like salt. There was a rabbi who called his 3 daughters to him. And the rabbi said to the eldest daughter, how do you love me? And she said, I love you more than I love my own life. And he was well pleased. And he said to his second daughter, how do you love me? And she said, I love you more than all the gold in all the world. And he is well pleased. And he turns to his youngest daughter and he says, how do you love me? She says, he says, come, how do you love me? And she says, I love you like salt in cooked food. And he says, that sort of remark I don't expect from one of my daughters. Leave this house immediately. You have no respect for me whatsoever. Leave this house. And she does. She leaves the house. And just like in the first story, she wanders. But this time she wanders for many weeks. And then one day, she comes to an inn. And she knocks at the door of the inn. And the innkeeper opens the door and looks at this bedraggled young woman, and she says, is there any work here? And he looks at her and he laughs and he says, yes, certainly, you can work here for your board and lodging. And her name was Shana, beautiful. And she was beautiful inside as well as outside. And she worked there for a number of years. She did the cleaning and the polishing. She served the guests who sat at the table at the inn. She made the beds. She did the washing. She fed the animals. She cleaned out the stalls. She fetched the eggs. She cooked. She did everything for her board and lodging. And one evening, the innkeeper and his wife said, all right, Shana, we are going to a very smart wedding. And you will stay here and look after the inn and make sure that it is pristine and brilliant when I get back. And we shall make sure that everything is clean. And they left. And Shana was so exhausted that she sat down on one of the benches and she put her head on the table and she dozed. And in her doze, she saw an old man standing next to her. And the the voice said, Shana, you too will go to the wedding. And she opened her eyes, and it was not a dream, for there she saw an elderly man with a white beard looking at her, and she listened, and he said, Shana, go to the wedding. I will look after the inn for you. I will see that it is in good order when they come back. And she said, thank you, old man, but, and like any girl, I have nothing to wear. And he said, come, look behind you. And behind her hung the most beautiful golden ball gown, and beneath it 2 silver shoes. He says, go. I will be here. I will see that all is well. And without thinking, she ran, she washed, she dressed in this beautiful golden gown, and she put on the 2 silver slippers, and she was transported to the wedding, where her graciousness and her charm and her intelligence and her beauty shone. And the people there thought, oh, we need to introduce her to the local rabbi's wife. To the local rabbi, she will make a good wife for him. But there was somebody else who noticed her there, and that was the Talmud scholar, the Talmud Chochem, who they said at the ball could have been taught by nobody else but Elijah. And she heard this. Elijah, an old man who makes miracles, who sends girls to balls. Elijah. And she saw the young man looking at her, and then she saw that it was very late, so she got ready to leave. But the Talmud Chochem had noticed her, and he thought, how can I meet her? There is a machitza down the center, and I cannot, and nobody will introduce me to her. So he made a plan. He went outside and he got a bucket, and he filled the bucket with tar, and then he went to the top step of the exit, and he laid the tar along the top step of the exit. And in her hurry to get back to the inn before the innkeeper and his wife were to return, she ran and she stuck on the top step, and she looked back and she knew that she would not be able to get her silver shoe out. So she forced her foot out. She saw that she had left her silver slipper behind, and she ran down the steps and she ran all the way back to the inn, just in time to see the innkeeper and his wife return. And they saw that everything was pristine. She changed back into her old clothes. She said thank you to the old man, and he disappeared. Now, some days later, there came a knocking at the great inn doors, and they unbolted the great inn doors, and there stood the Torah Chacham with a silver slipper in his hand. And he said, I think there is a young lady who I have loved since I saw her at a wedding. She must reside here. And they said, no, 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 we only have a servant girl here. Be off with you. And from her hiding place, Shana brought the 1 silver slipper that she had, and of course they matched. And then Elijah blessed the couple, and they arranged their marriage. And Elijah said to Shana, Shana, at the wedding feast, I would like you to invite your father, the rabbi. You have not seen him for many years, and he will not recognize you, but the right thing to do is to invite your father. And so she did. And there was a grand wedding feast. But during the feast, she noticed that her father was not eating his food. So she went up to him and she said, excuse me, Rabbi, but I noticed that you're not eating the food of my wedding feast. And he looked up at her and he said, I'm terribly sorry, I don't mean to disrespect you, especially on your wedding day, but I cannot eat this food. It is unpalatable, it is tasteless. There is no salt in it. And she looked at him and she said, do you remember when you asked your youngest daughter, how do you love me? And she said, I love you like salt in cooked food. And he looked up as a shame, my beautiful shame. And his tears flowed down his white beard, and there was a wonderful reconciliation, because now he understood. Oh yes, now he understood in his old age. And Elijah, he started the singing with a mazel tov, a mazel tov, a simba tov, a mazel tov. Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
It's a sweet story.
One of the Hebrew stories, one of the Hasidic stories.
How are you? Yes. Have a?
A story about a shoe, obviously.
No, they don't. That only the. I'll explain it as easy as I can. Right through the cultures in all the world, there are more or less the same folk tales. And the folk tale of the three daughters and the shoe or slipper runs right through Arabic, Persian, European, Eastern, Western stories. And everybody has their own interpretations, but basically that is the story, because mankind is the same. So that is the story. And so few people realize that Shakespeare's stories are based so often on folk tales or on stories and plays that he had himself read. Anyway, there you go. I'm pleased you enjoyed it. Oh, yes, somebody told me about this, which I thought was really rather charming. So I'm going to pass it on to you. So many of us are immigrants from other countries. I certainly am, my family is. And they were saying that when the penal colonies were being set up in Australia, the magistrates in England were gathering the poor and the prisoners and hauling them onto ships and sending them to Australia. And the imagination boggles, because here is the scene of a magistrate saying, will the accused please be upstanding? You have been accused of pinching 3 sausages and a yard of lace, so we are going to transport you away from this cold and wet country in a ship all the way to Australia, where it is sunny and it is warm all year round. That will serve you right. I just thought that was charming. Do you know about the young girl who went for an interview? And she looked very silly. And the boss said, right, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And the first question is, how many days of the week begin with a T? 2. Right, and what are they? She said, today and tomorrow. And he said, well, you're very clever. And he said, how many seconds are there in a year? She says, 12. He said, 12 seconds in a year? She says, yes. 2nd of January, 2nd of February, 2nd of March. He says, all right. I'll ask you a last question. What is the name of the swag man in the song?